Do I sound better now, by the way?
Yeah, you do. What did you change?
I unmuted the microphone. Boop-a-da-boom.
By the way, now I've mentioned to people that we're recording, all they can ask is, so who won bingo then?
I don't know.
They've all paid more attention to it than I have.
I don't even. I don't think I looked at our board once.
I've looked at it from time to time, but not sort of taken in any of the information, you know?
We're just the least invested member of that group.
The problem is, my favourite part is the spreadsheet. Once the spreadsheet is made, I'm kind of like, wow, that's all my fun gone now, isn't it?
Yeah. So many opportunities during the season for like rules lawyering, though. I'm surprised you didn't get more involved when people had disputes about what could be ticked off and what couldn't.
Oh, I did. I really did.
Oh, I just didn't see it then.
Yeah, because it was in a Facebook chat. Why would you? You've been more active in that chat than any other.
What, the bingo chat?
That's not saying you've been very active, but...
Yeah, I look at the bingo chat. It's one of the few ones it's not permanently muted. It gets muted if there's a huge conversation that I'm not interested in, but it's not all muted all the time.
Just most of it then by that sort of metric.
No, I'm interested in the conversations that happen. The problem is that people start having conversations when I'm at work, and it's like I can't. And so I just need to shut my phone up for a bit so that I can focus on what I'm doing.
See, this is one of those places where I'm lucky in my job that when I'm busy, I'm the kind of busy where I can't look at a phone if I want to. That temptation thing isn't really there. Whereas I guess for you, at a desk, especially now without colleagues around, it would just be so easy, wouldn't it, to get involved? So you need that kind of self-control to mute something out of existence, or out of your existence.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. The thing is, though, is with... I don't know if you've ever come across this like meme or like comic thing online about like trying to explain what it's like for a programmer when they get interrupted. So like I'll be focusing for an hour and in that time you slowly build up this ever larger mental model of what's going on. And then my phone vibrates in my pocket. And that is enough for the entire model to just collapse into a black hole. And it's immensely frustrating when it happens. And so like so I sort of I end up having to sort of like, put it on Do Not Disturb or mute specific conversations because it's like, well, I want it to be there if someone needs to get to me, but I don't want to have an hour of my work ruined because someone was confused about what bingo square they could tick off.
Anyway, we have gone vastly off of topic without ever even going on it in the first place, which is kind of impressive even for us.
Look, it's because we are professional podcasters who know exactly what we're doing.
Hang on, let me move stuff around for a second.
This is gold. This is all staying in.
There we go. Professional podcasters.
Did you move stuff around so that you could do air quotes?
No, I moved stuff around so that I could pop without my pop filter stopping the popping.
Oh,
because that's professionalism.
Okay.
It was totally worth it. I committed the exact right amount to that joke.
That is a joke that I won't get until the edit then.
Oh shit, yeah, because you're not listening to this microphone, are you? I was like, how could you not hear all of that rummaging? But yeah, the phone I'm talking to you on was literally behind me at the time.
Yeah, well, there we go.
There we go. Comedy gold. Follow-up wise, I feel like this is follow-up that's maybe come a couple of episodes late, or has it just been that long since we made an episode?
This is follow-up from the last episode. It's just been a long time since we've recorded. But I can try and guide us through it a bit.
Do it.
So the last episode, we were talking about some of the stuff we've been working on in terms of robot building, and we asked a few questions about brushless motors, specifically why it is that you can't drive two sensorless brushless motors from a single sensorless like ESC. And we had a couple of really fantastic comments, and I will link to them in the show. I say I will. Ryan will link to them in the show notes.
Yay, will.
To explain it, which is so like, thank you so much for taking the time to explain that and write all the detail. But to try and summarize what we've learned, brushless speed controllers for like sensorless motors are not as senseless as you might think. So they can sense something about the state of the rotor based on the induced EMF coming back from the motor. So as the motor spins, it will create voltages across the other wires, and the speed controller can use that to know roughly where the rotor is or something about it to time the pulses correctly. So as it speeds up, it slowly increases the speed of the pulses, and it can sort of do the speed control that way. So if you put two motors on there, if they are not in exactly the same state and then mechanically linked and kept in that state, then the weird faux censoring thing that the ESC tries to do won't work, and everything will fall apart. I think with what we've got with our hammer design, technically, I think we could do it from one ESC, but I don't trust anything that I've built to hold that state perfectly. So we will be using 2 ESCs if we go with 2 motors, which we probably will. But yeah, that's roughly that. I don't know. It all falls apart at the last minute.
I'm so sorry for any laughter that you heard there, but I did kind of lose my shit. Senseless motors sense?
Well, they do. This is the thing. Like they do actually.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a confusing thing. I couldn't have put it any better. That's the worst part.
Well, there we go. What else did I learn? So I also sort of like, so the other thing that I've learned is that an assumption that I've made that I think is wrong, or I've since sort of seen is wrong, is that brushless DC motors are the same as brushless AC motors. The way that it worked in my head is that those 2 types of motor are the same. It's just that you need and then the ESC that we use for brushless DC motors took DC stuff and then made 3-phase AC power to drive the motor. That's how I sort of thought it worked. And that's not entirely true. I'm not expecting anyone to explain the difference between them particularly. What I've discovered is it comes down to differences in windings, which confuses me. What was it, like sinusoidal windings versus some other type of winding? I don't know. It's all very weird. So yeah, motors are confusing. I don't fully understand them, but I understand better about the brushless DC motors that we are using, and that is enough for me.
So for the most part, what we need to know is how to make the thing go.
Yeah.
I love understanding as much as I can about the why behind it, but it sounds like that part is kind of getting into a zone where it's just like, yeah, I'm probably better off not knowing. If I start trying to know this, I'm just going to not know it properly. I'm not really going to understand. I'm going to start trying to base decisions on it, and that's just a slippery slope, that is. Just give me the thing that works and the thing that makes it work, and I'll make something crap out of it.
When I started looking into the difference between like AC brushless motors, brushless DC motors, and stepper motors, which all seem to be pretty much the same thing to me, but with differences, it all reminded me a little bit too much of my degree, which is not a positive thing. So I backed away slowly from those articles, and I'm content to know that they are different, and that's enough for me.
Stepper motors still interest me. The more I've played with the CNC, the more stepper motors are intriguing. And I know that very early on in Hello There, we did consider them for that that spring mechanism that we thought we could build. Just never happening. The arrogance of that, like 3 or 4 days where we thought that was a possibility. God.
What I find really interesting about the mechanism that I've been working on for Your Moves Hammer is I'm pretty sure that what I'm building is an idea that we thought about for Hello There, and then thought, that's probably a bit too complicated, and it's more complicated than the more complicated we thought it would be. So I'm glad we didn't try and do it, because I don't think we'd ever have finished it.
Oh, no. Our stupid fishing line-based system, as much hassle as that was exactly the right amount of hassle for us at that time. Although doing this with one motor probably wouldn't be too bad.
Well, so I think the thing is at the time, we weren't sure if we would need to do limit switches. I still think that servo, given the information we had at the time, I still think a servo was the right choice, because we knew that we could drive it and control it without complexity elsewhere. Whereas I think whenever we thought about using other motors, I always end up sort of thinking, do we need limit switches on this? Maybe. I still don't know if I need limit switches or not. I think probably they'd be a good idea, but yeah.
I think we would probably have just done big brushed motor if it wasn't for me having this bee in my bonnet about constant changes of direction killing ESCs, which, if drive is anything to go by, not really a thing, but I'd obviously read one thing somewhere a long time ago, not really understood it, and just gone, no, bad idea, do not do.
Oh dear.
But I have no regrets.
None at all.
And I genuinely mean that. It feels like there should be a punchline that follows it, but no, I've covered this ground before. I like the robot. It's just, we're about to make it about us, It's like, not again. It's not funny anymore.
It's always about us. Well, I've got some more of me to talk about. If you want to hear more about progress on Your Moves Hammer.
Oh boy, do I!
So, I put 2 motors on it. So once again, I I bought some stuff from Bristol Bot Builders, and Joe was very kind and flashed the firmware on the speed controller to do forwards and reverse because I don't want to learn how to do that.
I hope Joe doesn't mind you advertising that fact. If he's about to get a bunch of requests, he might not be a very happy man.
I'm not saying that Joe will do it for everyone. I'm just thanking him.
You're saying that you're special.
Just saying that he's did it for me, and I'm eternally grateful. And without that, your moves hammer would not exist in the way that it does today. Anyway, so I got some more parts, got a second motor, and remade the mounting thing that I built before with even more precision, because trying to mesh 3 gears accurately is even harder than meshing 2 gears accurately. And yeah, I've done some testing with a dual motor hammer now, which is exciting.
And I very much enjoyed the testing videos.
Oh, I think that testing video was like the only hit that hammer could do before it broke. Like, it broke immediately after that because so we've got like the motor goes through a planetary gearbox thing, and then on the output of the gearbox is another like pinion gear. It's an aluminium gear that's held on to a D shaft with a grub screw. And some point shortly after that testing video, the grub screw got pushed out of the aluminium, taking the threads with it. It just got sheared out, basically, by the torque there. So now only one motor is meshing properly. So we need to do some work on stronger materials. And I think it's an amazing problem to have, to go from a servo-powered hammer to there's so much torque that we need to use steel pinions rather than aluminium.
And the fact that that's not because of the teeth on the gear stripping, but because it's the thread on the grub screw that holds it on to the output from the gearbox. That's not a failure mode you ever think is going to be a thing, is it?
I sort of couldn't believe that it happened, really. It's mad.
I think if the, technically failed self-writing test didn't already tell us we were dealing with much more power than we realised, I think that definitely does.
That self-writing test. I don't know if I said this last time or not, but I'm going to say it now. The question I asked on Twitter is, does it have enough torque? To which the answer is yes. Like, I know people have gone, no, it doesn't, and then they're justifying themselves as being technically correct because it ended up upside down again. But it wasn't upside down because of a lack of torque.
Hang on, I'm going back and checking the wording on this because this could be quite a big brain play from you. I've just had to go back through the tweet. Yeah. Do you think it has enough torque to self-right? Well done, Sam. Well, yes. I approve of this. Good job. That is 10 out of 10 tweeting. I'm so proud of you.
I'd sort of forgotten about that, but like you and a few other people had sort of said, well, technically I was right. And I was like, no, you weren't.
And I love that you've waited until now to point that out.
Oh, I just didn't. I don't like causing drama. I don't want to start arguments with people, but you've pulled it out of me.
What's that, Sam? You don't like causing drama?
Look, I blame you for that drama.
Okay, I think drama is a strong word. I believe I started a conversation that was productive, productive.
If you say so.
So most people won't have seen this because we put out a video on our own Twitter of a fake spin-up test that looked very dangerous. And in the tweet, immediately after, literally in the same video, we had the fake thing and then immediately showed how it was done. We weren't always going to do that, but we both decided that you'd done too good a job faking it to just put it out as was with no explanation.
When I saw what I'd made, I was like, oh, God.
And you had this plan, you had this idea probably a good month before I even finished that robot. And
you're going to pin the idea on me, are you?
Oh, no, I loved it and I was all for it to the point where I think it is the main reason I actually got the robot finished. I don't think I would have gone through the stress of wiring that thing if I didn't have that video in my mind. So yeah, put it on Twitter. Absolutely fine. No dramas. People see it, kind of go, ugh, and then, phew, straight afterwards. I decided that I'd like to see what happened if it didn't have that second part.
This was entirely your decision.
Oh yeah, this was funny. I didn't even tell you I was doing this and I actually feel quite bad about that.
It's okay.
But, using a personal account and so on, I went on to a Facebook meme group. So that's, thing number one. It's a meme group. Don't expect serious stuff there. And one that I knew was populated predominantly by builders. This is the way I justified this to myself. I was like, this would be an audience of people who get it. and posted it without the second part to see what people would do. And it's worth saying that a vast majority of people immediately saw it for what it was and went, that's actually pretty well done. Couple of people got very shouty, and I kind of respect that. You know, they saw something that looked wrong and they called it out. Some of them got a bit personal about it, but, you know, they called it out. I did get contacted by the admins of the group pretty much straight away just to go, this is, you know, we're fairly sure this is fake, but this is fake, right? And I also got, I won't name the person, but someone who I hugely respect and admire from the UK community did also reach out going, hey, you know, I know this is fake, but be careful. People might not realise it's fake. They might go and copy it, which is a totally valid point. And that was why I was going to do this anyway, but I maybe did it a bit sooner on the back of that. I did edit it to include the behind the scenes part. So I thought that was kind of case closed. Turned out it wasn't. Turned out there was quite a lengthy thread on another group about all these other safe testing videos we've seen lately that was directly referring to our fake video. Now, I will say, that whole thread was a pretty good discussion about how sort of people who admin various communities should deal with unsafe testing videos in their communities. You know, do you take it down immediately to avoid anyone seeing it, being influenced by it? Do you leave it up so that people can have a dialogue with the person who made it and hopefully show them the sort of better way of doing things? I think there were some other options in there as well. So it was a really interesting and I think productive conversation. But it took me a good day to realise, oh, that's why they made this. I also, this was always something I was going to do, but I also generally enjoyed trying to explain the actual testing setup in the video I made about the robot. I think I always feel underqualified to comment on this kind of thing, and realistically I am, but the way I see it, a video like that is just sharing an experience. So I'm comfortable to go, here is what I've done, here is why I'm okay with it. I don't think the testing I'm doing on this thing for real is anywhere near the gold standard of robot testing safety, but I think I've got a setup which is safe enough. Everything has a certain amount of risk involved, and for me, the risk of how I'm doing things is low enough for me to be comfortable with it and comfortable sharing it. But I am, well, maybe this shows a slight mismatch of priorities. I am planning on building a little testing enclosure when I can find the right free stuff in the scrap bin at B&Q. It's like, I'm going to make it. I've bought the polycarb for it, but I'm not paying for the wood. For some reason, I'm like, no, I'm not going out and buying wood for this. I know I can get it for free.
Nice.
And that will mean that I can actually start spinning this thing up above, 40% and videoing it and putting it out and doing cool shit with it, which will be quite nice to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a ramble and a half. I don't quite know what any of that contained, but I had fun with it.
I think it's good to put, like, in the videos you've done where you've explained your testing stuff, I think it's good to do that because I think that you have taken reasonable precautions. And I also think that by explaining it, it means that people aren't making assumptions about what you're doing and can correct you or whatever, can like give feedback on what you've done in a more meaningful way. So I think it's a positive step to do.
I do still worry that I am simply posting a test video that didn't happen in an arena, because I know there will be a lot of people who say the only good test, the only acceptable test is a test in an arena. And I completely understand that way of thinking. I come at this from kind of two angles. One is people are going to test, so let's at least show them the best way to do it without one. Again, not saying that mine is the best way, but it's good to have discussions about how that can be done safely. And I can't remember what the other angle is.
The thing that stands out to me is everyone has different ways of measuring risk. I know that you and I have different approaches to measuring risk, and everyone does, and that's fine. And I think that while we have some level of sort of audience, we are public enough with what we do, and there is this, I think that what comes with that is a certain amount of responsibility to not demonstrate ridiculous things. I feel like maybe our little fake video is pushing it a bit far, whatever. But at the end of the day, people's safety is their own responsibility. Like, if you see what Ryan is doing and go, I don't think that's safe enough. It's like, well, it's not you doing it. It's Ryan's decision. It's his call to make. And if you're thinking, how should I test it? I think it's up to each individual to consider what they're willing to do. I think there's obviously ridiculous stuff like putting your face right next to a spinner. Like, don't do that. That's a really bad idea. But as you get more and more towards the safe end of the spectrum, having the robot clamped down when you're a little distance away from it and maybe with some kind of barrier between you. I think that's safe enough. I think that's fine. I think that if you want to build an arena to do more testing, great, go for it. But I don't think it's reasonable to insist that everyone on the planet builds an arena whenever they want to test a little 150-gram robot.
I will say, if I found out that someone had seen that video, not known it was fake, and copied it, believing that was an okay thing to do, while my brain definitely tells me that that is very, very much their own fault, I would still feel bad if they got hurt doing it.
Yeah, so would I.
Not as bad as if I directly told them to do that, but I would feel a degree of responsibility for that.
Yeah.
So, while I am, yes, safety is your own responsibility, if I felt I'd influenced it, that would be a slightly different situation for me. But I have, again, I say that I have a sort of a degree of comfort with the testing setup I have that makes me okay with using it and showing it. It's exactly the same with that. I think, my assessment of the risk of something bad happening as a result of my action says that it's low enough for me to be comfortable doing it.
The safety police will never be happy. That's the thing, Nothing you do is safe enough for some people.
I'm really, really hesitant to use phrases like safety police because I don't want to downplay legitimate concerns that people have, but I understand the sentiment you're expressing. And not that I think I've been on the wrong end of that, by the way. Anyway, I'm now making so many caveats and so many sort of little cover my arse statements that it's probably time to crack on, isn't it?
But in summary, we made a fake video. It was funny. It's a joke. Please don't put your face next to Spinners. Thank you. Goodbye. I think that's it for follow-up. I think we've followed up on all of the shenanigans we've been up to since last episode.
Yeah, so what we'll do now is attempt to go through the entire top 32 of BattleBots. And we will do that by not doing that. That's our chosen strategy tonight.
Yeah, continuing a long-standing tradition of half-arsing BattleBots coverage, we shall round out the remainder of the tournament in a single episode of Spinnerproof.
Mind if I deviate from the show notes already?
Yeah, go for it.
General thoughts on the outcome of the season.
Of the outcome of the season?
Yeah, i.e. like top whatever matters to you, winner, etc.
So the season as a whole, I've enjoyed watching it. I think it's a good season, all things considered. I'm disappointed but not surprised in the outcome in terms of the winner. I think of all the years to have an interesting robot win, this was it. And we've once again got a 4-wheel drive vert spinner as a winner. And it's like I'm super happy for them. That team worked really hard to get there. They had a really great tournament, I think, to do it. They had some amazing fights and it's all great. But equally, it's like, come on, we could have had Shatter or someone. Like this was the year.
I mean, we probably couldn't have had Shatter, but yeah.
Maybe not. But this was the year where it was like we could have a non-meta winner, and that would have been really cool. So I'm a bit sort of like about the final thing. And I think as it got closer to the end of the tournament, and it became more and more clear that it was going to be another sort of I don't know, a robot that's so the same as all the other successful robots we've seen, it was sort of like whatever. I'm sort of like got less invested, I think, towards the end of it. But overall, I'm pleased with the season.
Yeah, exactly my experience with it as well. I hope I said this last season, because it's something I've been thinking for a while, but Fight Night kind of spoils us with the interesting matchups that it constantly provides. So when you get down to the sort of top 4 in particular, and you've got 4 super meta designs, because there is an archetype that just works. And yes, this year, we have got variations on Spinny Thing at the front. We've got one on a lifter. We got one with only 2 wheels behind it. And we got one that slides backwards and forwards. The general archetype there of the thing they do to win their fights is Spinny Thing at the front. Whiplash is kind of the one slight divergence from that in terms of what it's actually trying to do. And for me, it's super underwhelming to go into that top 4 going, oh, okay, this is now a battle to see who has the most and longest forks.
Yeah.
It's like, because you know that they are 4 of the same type of robot, no matter how varied their sort of styles might be, you still come in essentially knowing what the strategy is for each fight now. Whereas if you have Hydra in there, for example, if you have, Blue Sky Thinking, Shatter in there, or the one I was expecting to have, which is Sawblaze, maybe that starts to change a little bit. Still realistically not a lot for both Hydra and Sawblaze, but that sense of, oh, now the grand final is going to look really different if this result changes. To me, is where a lot of the excitement and interest is. And once that's lost, I do kind of go, we're just going to watch stuff get smashed now, which I'm realizing is less and less of what I'm here for. It's great, don't get me wrong. Love the smashy bits, but I have a favourite kind of smashy, it turns out, and it's not what we get delivered towards the end of the tournament.
Yeah.
That said, Top 8 in particular threw up a lot of really cool and interesting stuff. So even the grand final as an episode had plenty for me to enjoy, particularly in terms of some just incredible driving. So it's not like the whole thing's a dead loss. Super stoked for Endgame as a winner. Wish they'd done it while I was still tipping them as sort of big dogs rather than after I'd given up on them. But it's fine. It's vindication of a kind. I'll make the most of it.
Yeah.
And we can't say they didn't absolutely dominate that final as well. So
I agree. I think the last episode was still good. Like I enjoyed every episode that I watched and stuff. It's just, you know, I think as you get towards the top 8, top 4, final sort of couple of rounds and stuff, like you say, it becomes a game of forks, which is less interesting. I think it becomes more, you can sort of just see who's going to win the fight more, or it feels like that. It was less surprising and I think less interesting, and you just sort of get less invested, I think, as the robots that I cared about were taken out. It was like, yeah, just less invested in the tournament, but still good, still very enjoyable all the way through.
I think for me, I'm now learning to manage my expectations and just come in accepting that the grand final probably isn't going to be the best episode of the season according to the things that I want and enjoy. A lot of people are saying it is the best episode of the season because they enjoy slightly different things. That's cool too. Really glad they feel that. But for me, it's usually sort of one of the first couple of Fight Night episodes seem to be the strongest. It's like my most memorable fight of the season is still Sawblaze versus Whiplash, with Sawblaze Witch Doctor a close second, with obviously the Whiplash fight being literally the first fight of the season.
Yeah.
So in terms of the rest of this, obviously we're not going to cover every fight, but we've kind of got a list of robots to go through that are almost certainly going to end up being in a weird order that doesn't make any sense.
That's the way it goes.
So I've decided to start us off with Hydra.
Hydra.
In particular, looking at the Gigabyte fight.
Oh.
But I think for me, there's been in general a journey with Hydra that is worth reflecting on. I don't know if you felt similar here. I don't think you had the same strong feelings at any point about Hydra that I have.
I think I've probably been on a similar journey to most people, just in less extremes at the highs and lows. I think I've always liked Hydra. The huge attachment was a bit of a letdown, a bit of a disappointment, and we had that discussion. I think I edited that and even between recording and editing that episode of Spinnerproof, I was like, I don't agree with myself anymore. I just like that. And then by the time we got around to releasing it, I was like, this does not reflect me as a person anymore. The things I've said about Hydra. I sort of softened a lot more, and I was annoyed at myself for being sucked into the producer's antics there. I still think that that's a boring strategy in a fight, and I wish they hadn't done it. But overall, I've liked Hydra. I've enjoyed their fights for the most part. I think that they're a funny team. I think I enjoyed some of the trolling that they did online towards the end of the season as well, like teasing attachments and stuff that they ostensibly had. That was funny.
Yeah, I had a grudging respect for that.
So yeah, I think similar journey maybe to you, not sure, but if it is a similar journey, I think more less dynamic range.
More moderate in general.
Yeah.
I came in not expecting Hydra to win the whole thing, but believing they could and wanting them to go far. You know, sort of final level of far. And after the huge incident, I did very strongly decide that I wouldn't morally allow myself to want that anymore. And boy, was it hard to maintain that position as things went on. I did it. I managed. I overcame. You know, I self-sabotaged quite beautifully. But yeah, you cannot deny that the robot, when it's being used in the way we would like to see it be used, very careful wording there, is a joy to behold.
Yeah.
The setups that they've got together for it in terms of the sort of baselines of the front ends, the sort of forky version and the wedge version, both proven exceptionally effective. It's a robot which, due to its strategy, doesn't seem to demand too much in terms of driving. which is a good thing because I don't think it's that well driven.
Oh,
I think the Whiplash fight in particular shows that there's a lot of panic flipping going on a lot of the time. But because, if you look at the Gigabyte fight as probably the best example, it is a robot that can pretty much sit and face its opponent. And that's been done very well a lot of the time. So again, it's something that it brings a different set of strategies. It brings a different mode of spectacular fighting. And it's a non-spinner that I actually like doing well. So it's always going to have my support.
I want to push back against the driving of Hydra. I think it is well driven. I agree that there is a certain amount of maybe panic flipping in some fights. I'm not saying that it's flawlessly driven, but I think that to do some of the stuff that he does takes skill and strategy. And I don't think it's an accident that he got as far as he did with that robot. Like, I think I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I just think it's good. I think it's very strategically driven, and I would never say that it's badly driven.
I think it's well driven in Plan A. Very well driven in Plan A. Good driving doesn't have to be Will Bale style sort of drifting around the arena. It's using your robot in the most effective way for the situation. So in that respect, when the fight is going the way they want it to, excellent driving. As soon as that's not the case, as soon as they realise that someone can get under them, there seems to be no real ability to get that robot around a side, to create opportunities instead of waiting for opportunities to come to it. That's the issue I see in the driving. That, and again, the sort of... And I realise flippers are a very hard thing to time as a weapon, but the amount of missed opportunities, especially as a non-spinner, non-spinners really have to take their chances, and that's where I see a weakness. I say this as a bad driver myself, so really I'm the expert here.
I think that's largely fair criticism, but I think it's unfair to characterize it overall bad driving. I think maybe under pressure, less refined, but I still think it's well driven overall.
Yeah, I'm happy to compromise on that as a position.
Excellent.
Holy hell, that Gigabyte fight was something else. Partly because Gigabyte kept working, which isn't something we're necessarily used to seeing from the full-body spinner contingent at BattleBots. Although both of them kind of sorted that out, which is quite nice to see.
Yeah.
I think that has now become... The only reason I want to talk about this fight is that I think that has now become my fight for beginners. I think it's the first thing we've had that takes that crown with any kind of confidence, any margin behind it.
You don't think Sawblaze versus Witch Doctor?
I do, but I don't want to necessarily be showing off two spinners. Two very different spinners, two that I love, very, very good fight. But I think the way that Gigabyte kind of hovers on those flips starts to give a really intuitive sense of just how ridiculous the forces involved are. And of course, that contact with the drive box for the screws. I think those are two big key moments where instead of seeing Sawblaze effortlessly tear through armor that someone who's watching it for the first time doesn't know how thick or strong it is, versus whole robot taking a ricochet like that, no contest.
Fair enough.
Although, again, if I'm in a situation where I'm showing people it for the first time, I'm damn well showing them both.
Yeah, that was such a crazy fight. Such a crazy fight. Seeing Gigabyte ricochet around what felt like all four walls of the arena, but was in reality probably just one corner, was pretty cool.
I wonder how many walls it would be reasonable to get a robot off of.
In my head, it sort of bounced off all four walls, but obviously that's not what happened. But that was very cool.
I feel like you're probably not much of a pool player, but I remember at uni we would play a game when we didn't want to pay for a pool table, where you're basically taking the 6 cushions of a pool table and you're taking shots in turn to hit first just one cushion, then 2 different cushions, then 3 different cushions, and so on. I'm now imagining Gigabyte versus Hydra as that game. Right, get us bounce off 1. Right, now get them off 2. Now get them off 3, all different, remember?
Yeah.
Oh, if we're talking weird physics, that takes us on to Whiplash, and in particular, the second Valkyrie fight.
Oh, balancing Valkyrie on top of their lifter there.
Just... I understand it, but I still don't understand it. So I understand why it works, but the fact that it's not only happened, but happened twice is just... Oh, it's every kind of magnificent.
Yeah. Yeah, it is so weird to see that kind of stuff at that scale. You think about like the weight involved and the energy that's in that system and stuff, and then it just balancing ever so delicately on the end of this arm. It's really quite surreal and super cool to see. I think Whiplash's driving in that fight was astonishing. Like that second Valkyrie fight. Like it was just textbook, don't let them spin up. Valkyrie just didn't stand a chance.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And the bravery on show, the faith in the robot. To go at it when it was spun up, to stick the lift there in particular, to lift when it's still spinning, and to do so in a way that just worked without fail. That ability to twice get hooked into the disc. Normally I'm a fan of even fights, especially if it's going to go to the judges. I want it to be as near a 50-50 as possible. That was nowhere near a 50-50, and it was brilliant in every conceivable way. And that's what Whiplash has just given us constantly, except the fights they've lost, obviously. Just that sort of oppressive driving, where you just imagine being the opponent and going, I honestly don't know what I can do differently.
I find that frustrating. Like these fights where it's incredibly one-sided, there are definitely moments in this fight that are amazing, but overall I find it frustrating. I guess I empathize with the Valkyrie team. Like, to be in a situation where you feel like there's nothing you can do. I really feel that. I don't know why, but I really feel that. And so I find those fights, like I find watching fights with Scorpios frustrating, I think, for the same reason, because their strategy ends up being a very sort of overwhelming, dominating thing. And Sawblaze does it as well sometimes. That sort of like they're amazing fights and they're spectacular. And I'm not sort of trying to disparage it at all, but it's just like I personally can sometimes find those quite frustrating to watch. I don't enjoy it quite as much.
Interesting. I would have never assumed that could be a thing for anyone. So I'm really pleased to be having the conversation where I'm finding out that's not how everyone thinks, you know?
I just feel for the team that's on the back foot in those situations. It's just sort of like, what can they do? What could Valkyrie have done? And it's just, I could just imagine being in that situation and finding it so astonishingly frustrating to be in that situation.
I think because of my total lack of competitiveness, I'd probably just be going, wow, that was bloody brilliant. And I think that would be my response. But that's because I don't go into anything with an expectation of winning anyway.
The thing is, I think the best fights are the ones where there's a back and forth, you know, where you've got a period at some point where it's sort of like, you know, one robot on top and then the other one finds a way around and comes back on top and you think, oh man, anyone could win at this point. It's a lot of amazing stuff. And even if that eventually peters out to one robot being the dominating robot, to have a sort of a period of the fight where there's a nice sort of healthy fight there is preferable to me. Whereas, you know, these fights, and I like Valkyrie as well. This is the other thing. Like I like that robot. I like the team, and like I don't, you know, you don't like seeing robots that you like not doing well.
It does help that while I like Valkyrie as a robot, I like Whiplash a lot more. But I think for me, in terms of the sort of drama and tension aspects of an even fight, for me, Valkyrie even spinning up the couple of times it does kind of ticks that jeopardy box for Whiplash.
Yeah.
Because you know that one hit from Valkyrie can do so much. Them just doing that makes me think, oh yeah, this is an even fight with stakes. Even though the rest of it is just Whiplash showing off what it can do in terms of pushing other robots around and lifting them up, which I also greatly enjoy because I really like Whiplash and I really like lifting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess your enjoyment of that kind of fight is going to be biased heavily by which robot you like more.
Yeah, for sure.
And evidently other things as well. I'm guessing then the Hydra fight would be more to your taste.
That had a bit more back and forth. Yeah, it was weird. I didn't understand why Hydra wasn't flipping properly. Like, it seemed to have no power in the weapon. That was a bit weird. But yeah, overall, I think it was a more balanced fight, but still so heavily in favour of Whiplash there.
The explanation for the lack of power on Hydra was that sort of debris had built up in their hydraulic system, I think from the pump.
No.
Sort of small bits of aluminium which had started clogging things. I think that was the reason for the lack of flip, which is a shame because they keep telling us there's more to come from it. And I really want to see something hitting the ceiling from a flipper. And you feel like Hydra was definitely the one this season that was going to potentially provide that. And they now have to wait till next time.
Yeah, hopefully they'll do it. That would be so insane. Ceiling hit from a flipper. Oh.
Well, I mean, there is another flipper entering that seems like it could have that potential. Looking at the Beetle version of it and what that can do, if it scales anywhere near as well as you would hope. Maybe that is a reasonable expectation, but that's a very long wait and see on that one.
Yeah.
So if anything, I found that fight a little frustrating because it was a lot of interlocked forks.
Yeah.
It was a lot of two low robots go face to face. One wins the right side, one wins the left side, and therefore not much can happen.
Yeah.
Also, do you remember that being a split decision?
I can't remember, actually. I didn't. When I rewatched the fight today, I didn't get as far as the decision.
I remember my, how can I put this? It's not quite a disgust instinct, but a heavy surprise instinct went off at some point with that judge decision, as I recall. Or maybe it was my pessimism instinct where I was like, oh, they're going to somehow mess this one up, aren't they? Well, there seems to be people who genuinely believe that Hydra should have won that, and I will never understand them.
No, I don't get that. There definitely was a judge's decision that was split that probably shouldn't have been, or that felt weird that it was split. But I forget which fight that was in.
Oh, don't make me go back. I have one judge's decision on this, only one. I've managed to keep it down to that. And even that I added actually halfway through recording, so...
Oh, blimey, yeah, I've just seen the edition, okay.
Any more on Whiplash, or should we go on to another little soapboxy moment from me?
I think it's time for another Ryan soapbox.
Right, listen up. Every single person that keeps saying that Ribbot getting this far is a surprise just because it has a bloody frog on it has not worked out what the meta of BattleBots is. It's a four-wheel drive box with a vert or an undercutter. That is a competitive design, and sticking a couple of pounds of plastic on top of it does not change that. Let's move on. I just can't believe it's a joke robot because it looks like a frog.
Oh, that's glorious.
How do these people find food, water, and shelter? It's baffling to me.
So glorious.
It's a meta design.
So glorious.
It's a meta design.
It's like a meta design wearing a moustache and glasses.
It's Bite Force with a false moustache. But people look at Endgame and say that's a Bite Force clone, obviously, because that doesn't have a frog costume. So maybe Ribbot did the right thing by doing that. Maybe it's better to be underestimated than be called a rip-off.
Oh dear.
Oh, at least the next topic is my happy place.
Let's do it. Let's go to your happy place. Is that the tantrum section?
What a machine. I say that. It doesn't work as intended half the time, but still.
Oh, I know.
The driving, simply incredible.
The astonishing lack of size.
What's the opposite of an absolute unit?
Especially like when you put it in when it was against Sawblaze, and you're like, how do these weigh the same? Like, how are they even in the same ballpark of weight? It's so much smaller than Sawblaze. It's amazing.
I mean, if you really want that comparison, look at the Gamma 9 fight as well. Gamma 9's basically a coffin.
It's just, that's so crazy. Yeah, Tantrum, I really enjoyed this season. I wish that the weapon had worked more as designed more often, but I feel like it worked enough versus Sawblaze that I was happy. I sort of saw it do what it was meant to do. And it's like, yes, they've done it on television. It's very exciting.
For me, Tantrum fell into the Whiplash zone of Control Bot with the spinner. I think it's done as much, if not more, with its drive as it has its weapon. And I'm so okay with that. Because the way that thing moves, the power it has, the magnet setup on it just makes it look like a beetle weight going around. So planted, so manoeuvrable. The armour they have on the front just giving that confidence to drive it aggressively into things. Really good front end setups. The choice of front end against Sawblaze, never saw that coming, but genuinely inspired. Everyone's expecting the forks there, but that little duck bill they have going on just tended to catch one of Sawblaze's forks, and that was all it needed to do to stop Sawblaze getting under. That
worked so well.
And then when the weapon does come into play, it's worked so much better than last time.
Yeah. I think it's definitely a weapon that it obviously does like little bits of damage, but over the course of a fight, that all adds up. And like, if you looking at Sawblaze at the end of that fight, it's like, well, that's actually taken quite a beating over the course of the fight. So I was very impressed with it.
There's no one big hit. It just wears down and wears down and wears down. And because they can choose their shot in a way that a normal vert can't, they can kind of make that little bit of chip damage kind of mean more by delivering it in a more targeted way.
Yeah.
The way they were able to do that in the Sawblaze fight in particular, where they had them against the rail, almost kind of shimmied sideways a little bit, and then delivered it right at the end of the pin. Beautiful.
So good.
Literally Sawblazing Sawblaze, but without the overhead bit.
That whole fight was so cathartic for me to see another robot like overwhelm and dominate Sawblaze in the way that it normally does to other normally does is that was a joy to behold. It's probably one of the few very one-sided fights that I properly enjoyed the whole way through.
And it's probably the most pure out-driving of Jameson Go you'll ever see.
Yeah, that was so good.
Yeah, it wasn't a question of this design is just, so horribly not suited to the opponent that there's nothing he can do with his driving. It was, no, these two are quite evenly matched, and you're still getting pummeled here.
Yeah, so good.
And I came in, Sawblaze was my little glimmer of hope in the whole top 8 that we could have a non-vert, well, it's still a vert of kinds, but a non-traditional vert winner. At least this one spins the other way. That's good enough for me at this point. I was fully on board for them to go all the way. And Tantrum was so impressive in that win that I couldn't help but go, yes, have it. You deserve this. Have my love. I'm still not quite sure how you got here, but have my love, have my adoration, and I will now use all of my energy to try and propel you towards a win that you already haven't got by about 5 months. I'm still going to try and use my energy as I watch this recording of a recorded thing.
One day you'll have enough love to affect the past.
To realise I'm effusing so much about the Sawblaze fight, I forgot I apparently also wanted to talk about a Bloodsport fight. Can't think why now, probably just more of the same. Good driving, good armour is good.
Yeah, pretty much.
It feels almost silly that I put Sawblaze next on the list after that. I'm guessing I did it as a nice link, but it doesn't link that well, really, does it?
Oh, it does look like. Speaking of Sawblaze versus Witch Doctor.
We've kind of said it before, really, haven't we, in the conversation we had earlier? What a fantastic fight.
Yeah.
What a redemption arc as well for Sawblaze.
Oh, so good.
And what a massive enhancement of the value of those parts now they've been sold on eBay. That's the real metagame here.
Brilliant. All about the eBay.
I was honestly expecting to be sat here for this sort of wrap up, talking about a bunch of great Sawblaze fights. I really didn't see anything but the final for them. And that one little change just threw everything for a loop. And I was so happy. Since we've already done that, shall we talk Mammoth Copperhead then?
Yeah, go on then. I'm less prepared for this, so you're going to have to...
I was going to say, you won't have rewatched this fight, will you? That's a real shame.
Well, because you added it after we started recording.
Yeah, sorry, I was reminded of a thing.
But take the lead, and I'll try and I'll see if I can remember.
This isn't about the fight. That's the thing. This is just a reminder of an overall topic from the season in terms of judging. I think the big issue we're having with scores from judges not reflecting the sort of feel of how a fight went is this clause in the damage scoring that damage only counts if it's due to the intentional action of an opponent.
Oh, yes.
And that is forcing the judges to do the impossible and decide, based on often very little actual information, whether something breaking was because of an opponent's attack or not. And where that really becomes a thing is with spinners going down. I don't think there will ever be a time where a spinner going down is nothing to do with anything the opponent did. If you have driven aggressively into that weapon with a wedge or with your own weapon, odds are you've done something to reduce its service life. So you can take some credit for it going down. And obviously, the balance of how much credit you'll be willing to give is going to vary in different fights based on what's been done. Now, I tried to ask a question about this in the Judges AMA on Reddit, and I got one really helpful response, which was basically, yeah, that is kind of hard to do. For the most part, yeah, it's very rare that we decide that damage was nothing to do with the opponent. The other response was, yes, we use our best judgment. Thanks. You use your judgment while judging. I feel I'm going to go to bed so much smarter than I woke up this morning. This is life-changing information.
Oh, dear.
Just thank you with all my heart.
The floor is made of floor.
Yeah.
Oh.
And the reason I wanted to talk about this in the context of Mammoth Copperhead in particular is that it seems as though the fact that Copperhead's drum didn't work for large parts of the fight would have been one of the things that swung the fight for Mammoth. They have probably been credited with that damage, which makes sense considering, they were whapping their weapon into Copperhead's weapon. And the way it was kind of stuttering on startup looked like a lack of startup torque, looked like cogging of some kind, which, yes, has lots of probable causes, but it's easy for a judge to go, oh, well, they've hit that weapon quite hard. Maybe that's done something to a bearing, misaligned something. There's now more sort of friction in the system, therefore not enough startup torque on the weapon. That's the sort of thing that you could very easily and very reasonably, arena side, seeing that once, go, yeah, that's why that happened, give them the damage points. Robert Cowan made a follow-up video in which he explained what the problem was, and it wasn't physical damage at all. It was an issue in their electrical system. They use something called HFI to basically dump a bunch of, this is my understanding, basically dumps a bunch of current into the motor to get it started to begin with, to give it more startup torque. And that system, for a bunch of possible reasons he explained, didn't work for a while. And his sort of conclusion from that is that the judges were wrong if they gave Mammoth damage points. Now, he's technically correct. Technically, it is not, technically it is against those rules for the judges to give points to Mammoth for that damage, because with hours of hindsight, intense knowledge of the robot, and a full teardown, we now know that that is why that failure happened. But that decision, to me, is still right because they don't have that information.
Yeah.
And I feel like part of the reason we're seeing vitriol over certain decisions is because we as fans now have so much access to information about what happened in a fight. Teams can come out and go, oh yeah, here's why that broke. And the moment that doesn't match with the way judges gave points, it's, yeah, X was robbed. Judges don't know what they're doing. It's like, how are you expecting them to know this information? Guarantee you the team did not work that way even during the fight. And if they did, that's based on their experience there, handling the controls and seeing how things respond, and their knowledge of how their own robot works. Unless you're going to somehow demand that the judges have all of that information available to them, and how would that even work? Do you get the team to go over and go, oh yeah, this is totally why this broke, guys? Yeah, it wasn't them at all. We just built it bad. Because loads of teams are going to go over and be honest about that. So what are you expecting from the judges? It's a completely impossible situation for them. They're being asked to do something that they cannot ever be expected to do accurately. But any time you suggest, how about we get rid of that clause, it's like, oh no, but they will be giving robots credit for damage that they didn't do. This is BattleBots, not pushy robots. It's like, do you want decisions that make sense or not? Do you just like being angry? Is that what this is?
I can ask that of you.
Oh, yeah, I realised the irony as soon as I said that, don't you worry. But it's okay, because I'm angry at the bad people, not the good people.
Sure.
So I'm okay.
It's funny with like information about why a robot broke and stuff, or what broke in a robot, or who did the damage and stuff. Like our experience, I think, of competing is you just don't know until the earliest you can possibly know is when you're back in the pits and have taken the robot apart. At which point the decision has already been made. The moment has passed. Like, the judges don't know, cannot have that information, and I think it's unreasonable to expect to delay the decision for that, because it can take a long time to figure out what went wrong, if anything. And I think you said before that the way to do damage is just assume that the robots are fully functional when they go in, and then at the end of the fight, just go which of those is more damaged. The other team gets the damage point, and I think that's a reasonable way of doing it.
As I say, the response I often get to that when I sort of suggest it in whatever judging thread is happening at the time is, oh, okay, so if a spinner runs into the wall and breaks its own weapon, the other team just get 3 points.
Yep.
It's like, well, yeah, if you want to, you could try and do a convoluted system where technically you're not giving points to the opponent, you're taking points away from the robot that damaged itself. The end result is still the same. It's about a swing in scoring. The damage points really end up just being plus whatever to one robot. If it's a 3 and 2, really that just means +1.
Yeah.
If it's a 4 and 1, really that means +3. Because those points are all being given out no matter what. It's just about where you swing that balance from one to the other. And the way I see it, it would actually be quite a good thing to incentivize durability, incentivize reliability.
How dare you?
If you don't want damage points against you, maybe don't break down. I say that as though it's the easiest thing in the world. It's obviously not. But, build for reliability.
Yeah. I mean, I think fundamentally, the judges can't know everything. You cannot have a system that perfectly matches the decision that you make with hindsight. You've always, at whatever point the judges make their decision, they're doing it with a limited set of information, and it could be weeks before they have the full set. And you just have to accept that sometimes decisions will happen where technically you're giving a robot damage points when they didn't do damage. It's like, well, that's the way it is. But the way it is now is you're not giving damage points when you should be, or you're getting weird decisions that don't really make sense but are technically correct, and that's not better.
I think it's worse than that. I think the situation we have right now is that judges are having to guess who to give damage points to.
Yeah. And they also, wasn't in the AMA, they sort of like have different ideas. Didn't one judge say that they didn't give points because of Mammoth's wheel falling off and another judge did or something? They seem to be very inconsistent with that kind of stuff as well, which seems very odd.
Yeah, so that was on a separate question, which was specifically about that fight, where someone was asking, did you award points for that? I think 2 said no, 1 said yes. And I'm okay with both viewpoints. So the viewpoint of the judges who didn't was basically, well, yeah, that happened after the fight. We're judging the 3 minutes of the fight. We can't really do anything to give that. The other judge said, well, that's obviously a sign that damage was done during the fight. The fact it wasn't visible to us means it's not worth very much because we're looking at, functionality rather than just amount of damage. But yeah, I counted that because that is evidence of something that clearly happened. There was a hit that happened there. Of course you're going to count that. And that I'm less worried about because that's just a situation where no one thought to write a rule about that. It's such an edge case. You're not going to have a rule written about that. I don't know if maybe it's worth having... One thing that came out of the AMA is that they don't talk about decisions until they've made them, which seems very fair. In a situation like that, I think it would be reasonable for the judges to quickly get together with one of the producers or whatever and go, okay, how do you want us to deal with that? It's not in the rules. How do we do this? Or you could also look at it as, well, they have 3 judges for exactly this reason. There are going to be slight differences in how people judge. That's why you don't just rely on one. But by having 3, you're kind of diluting out that difference. I think that's fair too. I was surprisingly unbothered by that. I was far more bothered when I found out that one judge gave Malice all 5 damage points against Shatter, which again, that's going to be the intentional damage thing. They presumably have gone, well, Shatter didn't mean to do that, even though that's kind of their whole strategy against horizontals. But ignoring that, presumably that's a question of we can't give Shatter those points. Maybe they have this idea that, because the 2 weapons are coming together, it can only be... I shouldn't speculate. That's bad form. But yeah, that really bothered me. I lost sleep over that, I think.
Oh, no.
I wish I was joking. I'm very invested in judging.
I can tell. I can tell because it comes up in every episode and then it ends up being the longest section of the show.
It comes up in every episode of Spinnerproof because it comes up... Well, I was going to say because it comes up in every episode of BattleBots. That's not quite the relationship between Spinnerproof episodes and BattleBots episodes, but...
It comes up in every episode of Spinnerproof because we only make Spinnerproof when it's come up in BattleBots.
That's probably fairer. I should also say, on the subject of Mammoth versus Copperhead, I would have been fine with either one winning. I think there are totally valid cases for both of them being the winner of that fight. It's another one that, for me, is a complete coin flip. So I don't see any, controversy either way.
Fair enough. I've forgotten the fight, so who knows what I thought.
Mammoth was crippled for quite a lot of the fight because of damage that Copperhead did to it. If anything, once Copperhead got his weapon running again and took off the kind of tusk that Mammoth had been getting stuck on, if anything, it fixed Mammoth. Which, again, may have counted against them. Maybe if their weapon doesn't get up and running again and they don't do that extra bit of damage and actually return the function to their opponent, maybe they then win. It's a weird fight. It's a really weird fight.
Well, shall we move on?
Oh, to happy...
Is it Happy Places?
Happy Places again.
Is it? Okay, if you say so.
Is this not a happy place for you?
I think it's going to end in a sad place.
We don't have to talk about the end game fight. We can pretend it didn't happen.
Okay. We'll talk a bit more about Shatter because we are contractually obligated to.
I made a little bet before the final with a few people that you won't have paid attention to this, I'm sure, but Shatter have released like a full kit of their kit. The sort of football shirt style thing they've got going on. And boy, would I love one of those shirts.
Do it.
I would... Well, here's the thing. It's quite expensive and it has to be shipped from America and they don't actually ship to the UK. So there'd be this whole convoluted process. I've got people who'd be willing to help, but it'd be this whole convoluted process, a lot of expense that really I can't justify on top of building robots. And I'm not going to do it as an instead. But I did make this little bet that if they beat Shatter, I would just say fuck it and get myself the shirt.
If who beat who? If Shatter beat...
Sorry, if Shatter beat Endgame, I would say fuck it and get the shirt. If they then won the next fight against whoever that might be, I would also get the scarf, which is on the website. And if they somehow won the whole thing, I would get the shirt, scarf, and shorts, and do... Now, here's a phrase that's going to mean nothing to you. A full kit wanker photo shoot. Which is basically when people wear the entire kit of their sports team casually. So just don't be that person.
No, let people enjoy things, Ryan.
No, don't go to a football game dressed like a substitute. It's just weird. Don't do that.
Let people enjoy things.
No, because they're wrong.
No.
They're happy to enjoy it. I'll just enjoy judging them. It's fine. So yeah, while I was very sad at the outcome of that fight, my wallet wasn't as sad. Although I'm still really fighting the urge to get that shirt.
Do it.
It would be the most irresponsible decision I've made in a very long time, but the temptation is very strong. 'Cause in fact, I think the pre-order period might have ended. Maybe I'm in luck.
Just do it. Go, just buy it. Go, buy it.
Going halves, are you?
I'll tell
you what.
If you buy the
I'll
shirt.
buy the shirt if you buy the audio interface.
Oh dear. I feel like I'd be spending more money than you still.
Oh, by quite some way, yeah. Oh God, I've just searched Shatter Bots FC shirt, and Google has given me Stevenage Borough Football Club, who I can't stand, Watford Football Club, who I passionately despise, and an article about Leeds United, who I hate. Thanks, Google. Very cool.
What was your search term? Shatter Bots FC shirt.
Yeah. Look, if you think that Google has any idea what to recommend you...
I'm just going to say that the first result on DuckDuckGo is exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, but then I'd be a weird hipster like you. I'm just going to Twitter instead, because they will have tweeted it.
Yes, I think it is anyway. Maybe it's not. It looks like it's a thing. It's a Shatter shirt. Okay, probably not the one you want, actually. Okay, right. It's the third result. It's on the first page still, and you get to the Bots FC website.
It's available until March the 21st. Today is the 18th.
Oh, it's available until you're legally required to complete the UK census.
Yeah. I wonder if they have sorted out UK shipping yet.
I doubt it. From what I understand, it's a royal pain in the arse.
Right, Ryan, no. Get back to the podcast. Back to the podcast. Shatter, very good. Love Shatter. Many hammer. Much ablative. So was your sort of lack of enthusiasm purely about the endgame fight, or...?
I still really love Shatter. I still think it's a fantastic robot, but that endgame fight was heartbreaking to watch. That was honestly one of the most painful fights I have ever seen. I did not enjoy seeing Shatter get wrecked like that.
You wouldn't have been on the watch party we did, because we did it super late that night. We did it at about 11:30 at night. And I noticed myself go very quiet for a few minutes after that.
Yeah.
Because I've been on this whole journey in the week of, I know Shatter's not going to go very far. I know that Shatter, it's an amazing robot, but I don't really see a route for it to go through. It's not going to do it. It's just not really something that's going to happen, so it's not worth getting excited about. But what if they did? No, they won't. Yeah. It's just not something that's going to happen. It's basically the experience I've had for every FA Cup game in my life, where my team have been against a much bigger team, and you kind of go to yourself, no, it won't happen. But if it did, it'd be really cool. But of course it won't, no. And the problem is I've had too many times where it has happened. I find it harder and harder to tell myself it won't. So I went into that fight fully and genuinely believing that something amazing was going to happen. And then boy, did it not happen.
Oh, brutal.
I'm finding it hard to talk about. It's amazing how much I invested myself in that.
We have a moment of silence for Shatter.
No, we're not going to do that, because you'll just edit it out.
I might.
I know you. I know your game.
Or maybe I'll edit it in.
Right. This is a test of you, your sort of moral fibre as a man now. Will you edit a silence in?
I'll tell you what I'll do, is I will leave that gap exactly as long as it was. I won't touch it.
Just wimping out that, isn't it? Lack of commitment.
No, I think that is like the only morally sound thing I can do in this situation. If I fiddle with it in any way, then I think that degrades the moment. You know, if I shortened it, it would obviously, we need the moment. It needs to have a moment of silence. But if I made it artificially longer, then it just completely undermines the very meaning of a moment of silence.
For our fallen hero. We could talk through the individual fights it's had. We could talk about anything, but it's the hammer. Nothing else compares.
It just continues to be an excellent robot. That's the thing.
I did, before the season, talk to someone who I knew the sort of final results. And I said to them, no specific spoilers, but is there some actual variety in the top 8? And their response to me was sort of, well, yeah, knowing you, knowing what you like, what you would consider variety, you're going to be very happy with this top 8. And they were absolutely right. You know, we did get sort of probably the best range you would reasonably hope for in a BattleBots top 8. Shatter being there felt like the equivalent of 3 non-spinners making it. I was expecting a hammer to be there. I was expecting it to be a beta. So I was expecting it to be beta. And I cannot describe how happy I am that it was Shatter instead.
Oh, beta has been... I've just forgotten about it. It's gone. It's not in my head anymore. They've lost the mind share.
I'm so sorry that I've made you remember it. It's all Shatter,
you know?
I can't I can't talk about beta because I will just be mean about it, and I don't want to do that. As a policy, we try not to be mean, and I can't.
Is that in itself mean to say that we can't talk about it because we'll be mean?
It's more courteous than just going ahead.
That's true.
Any more on Shatter?
I don't think so. Please keep competing with it. Please keep improving that robot. I believe one day a hammer will win, and I want it to be Shatter.
I put this last with the note that I was doing so out of a sense of duty. We should really talk about Endgame at some point, haven't we?
I mean, should we?
I'm not sure we've mentioned Endgame all season.
Do we need to talk about Endgame? Like, it's another... I know that it's not a Bite Force clone, but as far as robots go, it might as well be a Bite Force clone. Like, I have nothing to say about it, positive or negative. Like, it's a robot. It's exactly the meta. It's exactly the robot that you'd expect to win, really, because it's a four-wheel drive vert. So, of course, they won. And I'm happy for the team, but I have nothing. Beyond that, it's like, okay, well, there we go. They won. That's that. I feel very neutral about it.
It's an archetype, and they've implemented, that's not really the word. They've built the robot very well. They've driven it very well. They've maintained it very well, and they've made very good strategic choices. And that really is the thing that wins you a competition like BattleBots. You can do all the R&D in the world on a completely new thing, but the people that are doing the well-known thing best will be the people that are up there at the end. And while it's not necessarily what I want, that is not a bad thing. If you want varied fields with varied winners, you need such a vastly different arena design that you're just never going to get that from BattleBots. So, Robot Wars, you would have grand finals. I mean, if you look at Series 10 grand final, the variety in that was ridiculous. But that's because it's Robot Wars and because it pushes its meta in a certain direction. BattleBots, you could argue that BattleBots pushes for this meta, or you could argue they just don't push at all and this is its natural state. I think the latter is probably more true in a pure sense. If you consider the sort of natural form of robot combat to be a featureless arena, they deviate from that the least of the heavyweight shows. So I guess in a sense, this kind of meta is the purest meta. And it does then come down to who does it best. That's not particularly sexy or exciting for TV, but it is the truth of it. And the fact that they've managed to be that team as an international team in 2020 is bloody incredible. And I do feel bad for them. I'm sure they don't seem like the kind of team to care too much, but I do feel bad for them that a lot of the discussion around it has basically been either it's bad because you are Bite Force, or it's bad because you're not Bite Force. That seems to be like the two options at the moment. We've already had this whole idea of sort of, asterisk season, whoever wins isn't the true champion. It's like,
no, that's a load of rubbish. That is. Like, Endgame, they've earned their win. They deserve this win for sure. Like, no question about that. They have won this season and they're a real winner. To be honest, I don't feel like our conversation would be much different if it was Bite Force. That's the thing. Like, if Bite Force won another season, I'd be saying the same stuff of like, it's great that they won, they deserve it, yada, yada, yada. But like, there's just nothing more to say about it. Like, it's not an overwhelmingly interesting robot in many ways. And that's just, probably not surprising to hear from us when we sort of rave so much about Shatter and other sort of less meta robots. That's just the way we roll.
I guess as well, we're the kind of people that when we enter a tournament, I think we enter it, maybe this is just me, you're welcome to disagree with that, I think we enter it more to be liked than to be successful. We enter it to stand out as a slightly unusual thing. I think the day will come where we'll enter it to stand out as a well-done thing. Maybe that's going to be the thing with your move, actually. Maybe that'll be the time that we transition into, hey, look at this thing that's actually kind of executed decently.
There's plenty more hurdles for us to fall at on the path to that, don't you worry.
And fall we shall. We're going to arrive with bloody knees and black eye. And that'll just be from the testing.
Oh, dear.
I'd love to be sitting here talking about Sawblaze as a champion or Hydra as a champion. I know we'd have a lot more to say, but I'm glad we decided to end on this anyway, even though it's turned into more of a negative conversation than anything.
Oh, dear. Is that a show then?
I think that might be a show, yeah.
You can find the show notes for this episode at spinnerproof.com/episodes/88. There you can find links to all the stuff we've been talking about today. You can also find a link to our Twitter at Spinnerproof, where you can tweet to us something, because I didn't think about it ahead of time. And I'm sure that's the second time I'm sure that's the second time I've done this.
You sticking with that?
I don't know, I'm genuinely sort of just trying to think now. I don't know. You can tweet. You'll also find a link. You'll also find a link to our. You'll also find a link to our Twitter. Shut up! Stop it!
I can't help it. It's funny.
Let me try and get this. You can also find a link to our Twitter at Spinnerproof, where you can tweet to us your favourite fight of the season. There we go.
It's generic, but it's nicely done.
It's good enough. Does anyone care? Do you think anyone cares about my computer? Is it even worth me complaining about it?
I think you should complain about it just because I haven't heard all the complaining yet. Pretend they're not even here, listening to us, watching us, judging us.
So for as long as we have been making Spinnerproof, I have been mocking you for your unreliable computers, I feel. And for the last, how long has my computer been degrading? 6 months, maybe a bit longer than that. My computer has been on a slow and steady downhill trend with its general reliability, and I've kept it secret from you.
You think you kept it secret, but I knew.
Did you know?
I didn't know.
I don't know how secret I did keep it, to be honest. But yeah, it was sort of been slowly going downhill, and it picked up the pace of going downhill in the last month or so. So it got to the point where it would take a long time to turn on. Like you turn it on, and it would. You get like the Windows logo on a little spinner, and then it would go to a black screen, and it would just stay at a black screen for like 30 seconds. It was always a bit ominous.
I love that you think that's a long time.
It's a long time for me, man. It's like just nothing. I was like, what's going on? Why has this happened? And then it would get to the login screen, and you sort of log in, and then there'd be another eerily long period while it logs you in and all that kind of stuff. So that wasn't fun. And then it stopped recognizing USB stuff. So if you plugged something in after it was turned on, the computer would not recognize it. You wouldn't get a boom, 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 and it wouldn't do anything. You'd be like, nope, doesn't exist. Never heard of it. And I'd have to go into Device Manager and like manually tell the computer, scan for changes. And then it would find the thing that I'd plugged in, like a hard drive or something. So that was annoying. Search stopped working. This was the final straw for me. So if you go into the start menu on a Windows computer and you start typing, you can search for things like applications to launch or things in the settings that you might want to tweak. And that stopped working. I'd type whatever I was typing, it would enter one letter, and then the start menu would just close every time.
This is a very ill computer.
Very ill, yeah. In the settings app itself, if you search for a setting within the settings app, it would also do that. I'd start typing a thing to search for, and then it would just close the settings app mysteriously. It's like, okay, this is very broken to the point of being quite hard to use because I search for things all the time. What else broke with it? It kept blue screening as well. I'd be using it, and then it would just suddenly go to the blue screen of death, and I'd be like, okay. So I didn't trust it. So I went through a week or so of denial about whether or not I'd have to reinstall the operating system, or if I was some way that I could go and fix this. And I did a bit of searching online, and it's not a common problem with like a particular Windows update or whatever. So I was like, okay, fine. I'm just going to have to reinstall Windows, take the nuclear option. So I made 3 complete copies of my hard drive.
Because of course you did. Why wouldn't you?
and then formatted it and reinstalled Windows, and everything worked. I turned on really fast. USB devices were connected and detected correctly. I could search for things again. Fantastic. I started reinstalling the applications that I use. I use a thing called the Windows subsystem for Linux. It's not important, but it's a thing that I use quite a lot. It's not important what that.
It's not important, but I'm telling you about it.
So it's important insofar as it's important to me. But if you don't know what it is, don't worry about it. It's like an application that I install that just lets me do some cool command line stuff without having to boot into Linux. It's a useful thing to have. And when I installed that, my USB stuff stopped working again. It no longer detected things. I was like, shit. Something about my computer and WSL being installed breaks stuff. And so then it was like, what am I going to do now? And I asked around, and it was like, maybe there's something about the BIOS or the chipset firmwares and stuff. So I was like, or chipset drivers. So I started updating chipset drivers, didn't fix it. Then it's like, well, I've got to update the BIOS. Now, if you've updating the BIOS on a computer is not fun. I don't enjoy it. If it goes wrong, then there's a good chance your computer will never boot again. That's probably overstated these days. I think most motherboards are a bit more resilient to it, but the BIOS is the thing that first happens pretty much when you turn a computer on. And I didn't want to update it, man. It's like you don't update it unless you need to, but I had to. And I looked at the releases on my motherboard manufacturer's website, and I can see that since my motherboard was made, 16 BIOS updates have been issued.
Ooh, that's a lot.
That is a lot. BIOS updates are not necessarily something where you can skip versions. You sort of like, sometimes you can, and sometimes it's like you have to install this version first. So I was looking at this and going, I'm going to have, not only have I got to update my BIOS, which is scary enough as it is, but now I've got to do it more than once. And I ended up having to update the BIOS 4 times in one evening. I did not enjoy that. But did it, and now everything works. I've got a fully updated computer, and everything works as I expect, and I'm very happy again. But that's my story. That's my journey. I'm sure nobody cares but me. But now I'm sat here in front of a computer that's basically brand new again. Doesn't have any of my files, and I look forward to many months of running into things that are not installed anymore because I forgot that I'd installed them and used them occasionally. There'll be many little utilities that I don't have. And I expect that it's going to take even longer to figure out how to get this episode edited and uploaded as I discover all the little scripts that I've written that I no longer have.
Well, it's okay, because I'm probably going to be dead all weekend anyway, so this ain't coming out for a while.
Yeah.
I think we should take a moment to sit back and appreciate that the man who was able to do all of that is the same man who had audio problems earlier because he hadn't turned his mic on.
No, don't remind people of that.
Oh, I'm making sure you can't get rid of that easily.
Deary me. Well, there we go.